When the first explosions lit up the night sky, no one believed it was real. People thought it was another drill, another government warning gone too far. But when the stars themselves seemed to flicker and die, humanity realized this wasn't a test. They'd bombed Earth, not a rival nation, not a terrorist group, someone else, something else. From the cold edges of space, they came without warning or reason. For days, the skies burned, and humanity did what it always did when faced with extinction. It fought, it endured, and it refused to kneel. In the beginning, the invaders didn't understand us. To them, Earth was just another blue-green rock spinning in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. A world of noise and chaos. They expected fear. They expected surrender. What they didn't expect was laughter. When their first attack hit, our satellites were gone, our power grids shattered, and still, people filmed the falling fire with shaky phones shouting, "We're still here!" across the burning streets. That's when they learned something vital about humans. You can scare us, but you can't silence us. The story that followed wasn't about armies or governments. It was about people. A mechanic who rebuilt a crashed alien drone in his garage. A teacher who led her students through a city buried in ash. A pilot who refused to eject when the sky turned to fire. Small acts, maybe, but each one whispered the same truth the invaders couldn't grasp. Humanity doesn't give up. Ever. By the third day, the enemy realized something was wrong. Their scans showed the planet still pulsing with activity. They'd flattened cities, yet their sensors caught strange signals. Music, laughter, coded messages bouncing between survivors. They didn't know those signals weren't random. They were coordinates, a map, a plan. Humanity had gone quiet for a reason. And what came next? Well, that was the part no one expected. You see, long before the first alien ship entered orbit, Earth had seen enough of war to know how to survive one. We'd learned from every mistake, every near end, every scar we gave ourselves. We weren't peaceful by nature. We were peaceful by choice. And when that choice was taken from us, the part of us buried under centuries of restraint woke up again. The part they thought was just myth. So when the enemy fleets began to descend, thinking they'd finally broken us, they found the skies alive. Not with panic, but with purpose. Lights rose from the oceans, deserts, mountains, and ruins of cities. Every corner of the world answered the same call. Humanity wasn't begging for mercy anymore. It was reminding the galaxy why it once whispered about us in fear. They thought bombing Earth would end us. But all it did was remind us who we were. And when the smoke cleared, when the stars burned red once more, a voice, calm, human, and steady, crackled across the void. Now you'll understand why we were feared. Then the signal cut. And that was only the beginning. The message echoed through every abandoned city, every bunker, every ship still clinging to orbit. For a moment, even the enemy fleets hesitated. The transmission wasn't from any government, any general, or known leader. It came from somewhere deep within the planet, an origin point they couldn't trace. But every human who heard it knew exactly what it meant. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Far below the ruined clouds, survivors began to stir. In the silence after the bombing, the world had changed. Skies were choked with ash and oceans glowed faintly where debris had fallen. But life didn't stop. It adapted. People gathered in underground shelters, old metro tunnels, and mountain bases that once served as relics of older wars. They scavenged power from forgotten generators, rebuilt communication networks from scavenged satellites, and most importantly, they started talking to each other again. It wasn't like the old world, where everyone waited for orders from someone above. There was no above anymore. Humanity had been stripped of its governments, its comforts, its illusions of safety. What remained was something raw, something honest. In every corner of the world, small groups formed with one shared thought. If they wanted Earth, they'd have to fight for it. But the invaders weren't careless. They studied us, or tried to. Their drones hovered silently in the wreckage, recording faces, collecting samples, observing patterns. They didn't understand why humans risked their lives to save strangers, why we shared food when we barely had enough for ourselves. To them, logic ruled everything. To us, emotion did. And that, more than any weapon, became our greatest strength. In one forgotten valley, where forests still stood, and the air was clean enough to breathe, a small team of survivors worked on something that shouldn't have been possible. The mechanic who'd rebuilt the alien drone had found more than he expected. Inside its shattered metal core was a memory crystal, pulsing with faint blue light. It wasn't just data. It was communication. A voice, distant and distorted, speaking in a pattern no one could understand at first. But when translated, one word stood out again and again: return. The word spread quickly among the survivors, traveling through hidden radio channels and coded signals. Return! Return what? Or who? Some believed it was a message between the aliens themselves. Others whispered that Earth wasn't their first target, that they'd fought someone like us before, and lost. Whatever the truth was, humanity wanted answers, and for the first time in days, they had something more powerful than fear. They had curiosity. High above, the enemy fleets began to regroup. They'd underestimated their prey. Reports of resistance, ambushes, and sabotaged outposts reached their commanders. What they didn't realize was that every destroyed human camp, every fallen city, was a lesson. We learned from them faster than they could adapt. We studied their movements, mimicked their technology, and turned their own tools against them. But even then, something deeper was happening, something beyond survival. Some of the survivors started having strange dreams, images of places they'd never been, stars they couldn't name, voices calling from the darkness. They spoke of memories that didn't belong to them. It was as if the planet itself was remembering something. And when the mechanic finally powered the alien core again, the blue light inside flickered brighter. For the first time, the voice spoke clearly, not in alien tongue, but in human words. We should not have come back. The room fell silent. The world held its breath. And somewhere far above the clouds, one of the alien ships began to turn, not toward Earth, but away from it, as if it too had just remembered something terrifying. The voice from the alien core changed everything. Those 5 words, "We should not have come back," spread through the survivor networks like wildfire. Every signal relay, every underground broadcast repeated them. The words raised more questions than answers. What did "come back" mean? Had they been here before? Some dismissed it as interference or a trick meant to divide the survivors, but others couldn't shake the feeling that the message was real and that it wasn't meant for us at all. As the days passed, the surviving group started noticing patterns in the enemy's movements. The fleets no longer attacked cities. They avoided them. They circled specific regions, scanning the ground, then retreating. Satellite fragments that still orbited Earth caught strange readings, bursts of energy rising from deep below the planet's crust. Something ancient was waking up, and even the invaders seemed afraid of it. In the valley base, the mechanic and a small team of scientists worked day and night trying to decode the crystal. Every time they activated it, more fragments of the alien message emerged. Broken pieces of a warning that hinted at a war older than humanity itself. Buried. Forgotten. Sealed. The words repeated in a haunting rhythm. Whatever had been buried under Earth's surface wasn't human, and the invaders hadn't come to conquer us. They'd come to make sure it stayed buried. Meanwhile, other survivor groups were dealing with their own struggles. In the northern ruins, a pilot and her squad discovered a crashed alien vessel, half melted, its crew gone. Inside, they found strange markings on the walls, drawings that looked eerily human. Faces, hands, symbols that matched cave art found across Earth. It made no sense. How could an alien ship carry art that looked like something drawn by our ancestors? The pilot recorded everything and sent the data back through the underground network. It confirmed what many had begun to suspect. The invaders knew us far too well. The tension between the survivor groups grew. Some wanted to keep fighting the aliens, believing victory was within reach. Others argued that Earth was caught in the middle of something far bigger, that if the invaders were afraid, maybe humanity should be too. Debates turned into arguments, and arguments into standoffs. The unity that had held humanity together after the bombing began to fracture. Still, strange signs continued to appear. Earthquakes in regions that hadn't shifted in centuries, magnetic storms that disrupted every form of communication, and always that growing hum beneath the ground, like the planet itself was breathing. The mechanics crystal reacted to it, glowing brighter every day, pulsing in rhythm with the tremors. Late one night, while studying the latest energy readings, the team heard something new. A low tone beneath the static, slow, deliberate, and steady. When they isolated it, they realized it wasn't random noise. It was a heartbeat, deep beneath the earth. The mechanic stared at the monitor, the color draining from his face. The signal wasn't coming from a weapon or a machine. It was alive. And as they watched, the heartbeat grew louder, shaking the ground under their feet. Somewhere in the dark, the thing buried beneath Earth's surface was waking up, and the invaders, still hovering above, began to withdraw from orbit. Whatever they had feared was about to rise again. The heartbeat didn't stop. It grew stronger with every passing hour, pulsing through the ground like a drumbeat beneath the world. Seismographs across the globe began to fail, their needles snapping under the constant tremors. What started as a faint vibration turned into rolling waves that made oceans rise and buildings sway. Everyone could feel it now. The planet wasn't just reacting, it was responding. The mechanic and his team tried to trace the source again, but every reading pointed deeper than any drill had ever gone. Whatever was down there wasn't small. It stretched across continents, as if the Earth itself had veins and something massive was flowing through them. The alien crystal glowed brighter each time the tremors hit, and every pulse came with a faint whisper, too soft to fully understand. But there was one word that kept repeating: awaken. Up above, the alien fleets began to scatter. Some ships broke orbit and vanished into the dark, while others hovered as if waiting for something. Their formations were no longer coordinated. They seemed confused, maybe even frightened. Humanity watched from below, torn between hope and dread. If the aliens were retreating, maybe they were finally beaten. But if even they were afraid of what was coming, what did that say about what was beneath us? The survivors' communication network crackled with chaos. Reports poured in from every region, massive power surges, strange lights in the skies, and strange symbols appearing on old structures, glowing faintly through the dust. Some thought they were warnings left behind by whoever or whatever had been buried here before. Others thought they were a countdown. In the valley base, the mechanic refused to stop working. He believed the crystal could still tell them what was happening. As the others prepared to evacuate, he connected the alien core to the remnants of an old Earth satellite, hoping to amplify its signal. When it powered on, the voice returned, but this time, it wasn't calm. It was frantic. The words broke through the static like gasps between breaths. Containment breached. It remembers. It remembers you. The message made no sense. Humanity? Remembered? One of the scientists stepped closer to the screen, eyes wide. "It's not talking about the planet," she whispered. "It's talking about us." Before they could question it, the power cut out. The ground beneath the base split open, dust filling the air. From somewhere deep below came a low rumble, not mechanical, not alien, something ancient and organic. It didn't sound like rage, it sounded like recognition. All across the world, the same thing was happening. Cracks opened in old fault lines. Light, golden and alive, spilled from the earth, spiraling into the skies like veins of fire. The alien ships that had stayed behind began to fall back, their engines flaring as if trying to escape orbit. For the first time, humanity saw the invaders panic. People ran to the surface to watch as the clouds split apart. The light from below reached the heavens, and for a brief second the stars seemed to dim. The mechanic stood outside, his eyes reflecting the golden glow rising over the mountains. He finally understood. The aliens hadn't come to destroy us. They'd come to keep something from waking, something that had once been part of us. And now, it was free. The ground shook again, harder than before, and a blinding wave of light swept across the horizon. The last thing anyone heard before every radio went silent was the alien voice, trembling, almost pleading. "You don't know what you've awakened." Then everything went dark. When the light finally faded, the world was no longer the same. The golden glow that had erupted from the cracks settled into the ground like molten veins, pulsing faintly beneath the surface. The air felt charged, almost alive, humming with quiet energy. For hours, no one spoke. Every radio was silent, every signal dead. Humanity waited, holding its breath, unsure if it had survived the end or triggered something far worse. Then, one by one, the systems came back online. Static filled the comms, followed by broken voices and half-finished reports. Cities that had been ruins were now different. Walls of glass fused with metal, streets shimmered faintly in the dark, and the air carried a low vibration that made people's bones ache. Whatever had awakened wasn't destroying the planet. It was changing it. The mechanic staggered from the valley base, his equipment destroyed, his team scattered. The last thing he remembered was the voice saying, "You don't know what you've awakened." But now, standing beneath a sky streaked with gold, he realized the truth was even worse. They didn't know what they'd reawakened in them. Across the globe, strange things began happening to the survivors. Some reported hearing faint echoes in their minds, memories that weren't theirs. Others claimed they could sense the heartbeat beneath their feet, matching their own pulse. It wasn't infection. It wasn't radiation. It was connection. Humanity and the planet had become linked in a way no one could explain. The same golden energy that crawled through the earth now flowed through people too, marking them with faint, glowing lines beneath their skin. While panic spread, the aliens returned, not in force, but as silent watchers. Smaller ships appeared in orbit, scanning the surface without attacking. They didn't fire. They didn't speak. They only observed. It was as if they were waiting to see what would happen next. Some humans saw it as a second invasion. Others began to wonder if the aliens were as lost as they were. Then came the second shock. In one of the northern zones, near the ruins of an ancient impact crater, a survivor group discovered something buried under layers of glass and stone. It wasn't alien, it was human, a structure older than any known civilization, filled with carvings that matched the same symbols seen on the alien vessels. Inside, they found a mural depicting two figures, one human, one not, standing side by side against something vast and shadowed, stretching across the stars. The mechanic received the transmission hours later. The image was blurry but clear enough to send chills down his spine. Humanity hadn't been innocent bystanders in this war. They had been part of it. Whatever was buried under Earth wasn't an alien weapon. It was something humanity had created long before history remembered. As night fell again, the golden veins beneath the planet began to move, glowing brighter, spreading across the oceans and continents like living rivers. The mechanic watched from the cliffs as the sky turned gold and the stars flickered in fear. The heartbeat returned, louder than ever, and this time it wasn't just coming from below, it was coming from everywhere. The invaders began transmitting messages across all frequencies, not in their own language, but in ours. Containment failed. Phase 2 initiated. Humanity has reawakened itself. And as the final words echoed through the static, the mechanic realized the most terrifying truth yet. The aliens hadn't come to conquer Earth. They'd come to stop it, because Earth itself was the weapon. The realization hit like thunder. Earth wasn't a battlefield. It was the weapon everyone had been afraid of. The aliens hadn't bombed the planet to destroy humanity. They'd done it to keep the planet from waking up. The mechanic stared at the glowing horizon, the golden veins spreading faster now, pulsing like arteries beneath the land. He could feel it under his feet, in his chest, inside his mind. Every heartbeat of the Earth matched his own. Humanity wasn't just connected to the planet, they were part of it. Across the globe, survivors reported the same sensation. They could sense one another, feel distant thoughts like ripples through water. The fear that had once divided them was replaced with something new, understanding. It was as if the planet itself was helping them remember who they had been before everything was lost. Fragments of ancient memories surfaced, images of vast cities made of light, of humans walking among stars, of something terrible that had been sealed away long ago. Humanity hadn't been the victims of that ancient war. They had been the reason it ended. The alien fleets regrouped above, forming a defensive ring around the planet. But instead of firing, they broadcast a final message in a tone that almost sounded like surrender. Containment cannot be restored. Earth is remembering. The mechanic watched their formation tremble, the great ships turning their weapons inward, not at Earth, but at themselves. They knew what was coming. The ground split wide in front of him. From the heart of the planet rose a column of light so bright it erased the stars. It wasn't destructive, it was awakening. Energy surged through every network, every ruined city, every survivor. Machines sparked to life. Old satellites rebooted, orbiting in perfect sync. It was as if Earth itself was rebooting a forgotten system, reactivating something buried in its core. The mechanic's communicator flickered once more, and a voice, human, calm, ancient, spoke from the static. "We are the memory of Earth, and you are its return." He understood then. Humanity had never been born on Earth. They had come back to it, long ago, after sealing away their own creation. The aliens hadn't feared humanity's violence. They had feared humanity's power to merge with the living planet. The bombs hadn't been an act of war. They had been a desperate attempt to keep Earth asleep. The light expanded, reaching the alien fleets. Instead of destroying them, it passed through their ships, disarming their weapons, quieting their engines. The ships drifted peacefully, glowing faintly as if forgiven. From below, humanity watched as the sky filled with shimmering gold. For the first time since the war began, the silence felt peaceful. Then, just as the light began to fade, a second pulse shook the air. This one was sharper, colder. It came from deep space, beyond the edge of the solar system. The mechanic looked up, his heart pounding as new signals flooded every channel. The aliens hadn't sent them. These were older, stronger, familiar. The voice returned, quieter now, almost like a whisper carried on wind. "We remember you too." The mechanic's eyes widened as he realized what it meant. The thing that Earth had sealed away wasn't gone. It had escaped. The awakening wasn't the end. It was the call. And now, something else. Something far older than both humanity and their alien watchers had heard it. The golden light dimmed, the stars blinked back into view, and for a single breath, the world felt still again. Then, from the depths of space, the stars began to move. The stars moved slowly at first, small shifts that could almost be mistaken for imagination. But as minutes passed, it became clear they weren't stars at all. They were vessels, countless in number, approaching from beyond the edge of the system. The mechanic stood among the survivors on the cliffs, staring at the night sky, glowing faintly gold. The light from Earth's awakening had faded, but its warmth still lingered in the air, steady and calm. Humanity had changed, and for the first time in generations, they weren't afraid. The approaching light stopped far from the planet, silent and unmoving. Then a signal reached every channel on Earth. It wasn't in words, but emotions, recognition, relief, and something that felt like sorrow. Images filled the minds of those who could sense it. Vast cities built among the stars, ancient humans standing beside alien allies, and then a terrible mistake, something born from their unity that grew too powerful to control. That something had been sealed within Earth, and humanity had chosen to forget, to start over on the very world that became their prison and their home. The mechanic finally understood the cycle. The aliens hadn't been enemies. They were guardians of a broken promise. And those distant ships in the sky weren't invaders. They were the descendants of the humans who had fled long ago, returning only when the signal reached them again. Earth's awakening had called them back. As dawn broke over the horizon, the golden veins beneath the ground dimmed to a soft shimmer. The tremors stopped, and the heartbeat of the planet grew calm. It wasn't rage that had awakened. It was memory. The Earth wasn't a weapon anymore. It was alive, aware, and ready to begin again with those who still called it home. The mechanic felt the pulse fade within his chest, leaving behind a quiet peace. The connection between humanity and the planet would remain, but the storm had passed. All across the world, survivors emerged into the light of a new morning. The air was clean, the sky brighter than it had been in months. The alien fleets in orbit stayed where they were, forming a silent ring of guardianship. There was no need for war now, only understanding. Humanity had faced the truth of its past and chosen not to repeat it. The mechanic looked out over the valley, where the ruins of the base had become covered in soft, golden dust. He thought about the people they had lost, the battles they'd fought, and how, in the end, it wasn't strength or weapons that saved them. It was their ability to remember, to learn, and to change. As he turned away from the cliffs, his communicator flickered one last time. A message scrolled across the cracked screen, written in simple, human text. Cycle complete. Begin anew. He smiled. The words felt right. Humanity had been feared once, not for destruction but for resilience. And now, after everything, the galaxy would remember them not as conquerors, but as survivors. Creatures of hope who turned their greatest mistake into their greatest beginning. Above, the stars slowly steadied, shining brighter in the clear morning sky. The world was quiet again, waiting, not for war, not for judgment, but for whatever came next. And this time, humanity was ready.